The following is a paid program and does not necessarily express the views or opinions of Equity Media, its management, staff, or affiliates of WBOK 1230.
Now, it's the Monitor's Mic with your host, Stella Cement.
Welcome to the Monitor's Mic, where we talk oversight, policing, and you. I'm Stella Cement, your host and the Independent Police Monitor for the City of New Orleans. And with me is Chriselle Williams, our Deputy Police Monitor. This show is your go-to source for discussing policing, law enforcement oversight, and how it all impacts you. From the Office of the Independent Police Monitor, we offer an independent perspective on city government. The Office of the Independent Police Monitor, OIPM, serves as a crucial civilian oversight body for the New Orleans Police Department, the NOPD. We ensure transparency and accountability within the police department by making sure the NOPD follows their policies, abides by the consent decree, and is compliant with all local, state, and federal laws. Our office operates independently from the NOPD and the federal monitors, allowing us to provide an impartial input on police practices and investigations. Now, what do we do day to day? We take complaints of officer misconduct from the public and from police officers. We review misconduct investigations conducted by the NOPD's Internal Affairs, which is called the Public Integrity Bureau. We're on call 24 hours a day, every day of the year for officer-involved shootings and critical incidents, and we will go to the scene and monitor the force investigation from start to finish. We're advisory members of the Use of Force Review Board and the disciplinary hearings. We run the Community Police Mediation Program, and we engage the community to ensure your voice, opinions, and concerns are heard. We, your hosts, are not police officers, but we are experienced attorneys from the criminal legal field, dedicated to transparency and accountability. We encourage you to call in today with your questions, comments, and concerns. While we may not be able to address individual cases, we are committed to following up with you. So with that, let's learn more about today's guest. Chriselle?
Today we have Dr. Shamika Kelly. Dr. Kelly is Louisiana's first Black crime lab director, bringing extensive expertise in forensic science. She previously served as forensic DNA analyst, supervisor, and consultant at the Houston Forensic Science Center, where she specialized in forensic DNA analysis, expert testimony, and backlog reduction initiatives. Dr. Kelly's contributions to forensic science and justice reform have earned national recognition, including the Saltzman Award for the American Society of Criminology. She holds a BS in Biological Sciences from LSU, an MS in Forensic and Investigative Genetics from UNT Health Science Center, and a PhD in Criminal Justice from Sam Houston State University. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Kelly. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you for having me.
So just to clear up a little, just to educate a little bit our listeners that are joining us today, we just want to start with some basic things so they can, understand what it is that we're talking about and what it is that you do. So just generally, what is a crime lab?
What is a crime lab? That is the number one question we get all the time. What is a crime lab?
Well, a crime lab is a facility that processes evidence and that the results from those experiments, if you will aid in investigative questions. So we take evidence from crime scenes, we'll process that evidence, we'll document our results, and we'll report our results out, and we'll send that report to the person who requested the testing.
Hold on, does that mean that Crime Lab actually collects evidence yourself?
We do. The crime lab has a crime scene unit that goes out to scenes and collects and preserves evidence.
Oh, really?
Wow. So crime lab will be out there picking up, say, like bullet casings or pieces of clothing or drugs off the ground or people or whatever.
We will collect evidence in the crime scenes, yes.
And what about biological material like blood and?
Yes, we do blood collections as well if that is probative to the investigation.
Wow. Who decides what evidence you pick up?
Our crime scene investigators will go through the scene and try to identify, along with detectives, what is probative to the investigation.
So that's very interesting. Now, who staffs the crime lab? Like, are y'all police officers? Are you scientists?
Well, we're a mix right now, but we're predominantly civilian forensic professionals. So there's 57 of us, and I think 6 are police officers.
Okay, you said your version of the F word, forensic. So, what is forensic?
Forensics is science applied to law and investigations. Okay, so you do your science, and those experiments are strictly to answer questions about crime.
Interesting, interesting. So, in policing shows, you typically see the same policing team from start to finish on an investigation. So, for those people that are watching those policing shows, they might see, say, like, as you called it, what was it, a forensic tech specialist?
A crime scene investigator?
A crime scene.
CSI.
A CSI, yes. So you would see them out there doing everything, including autopsies. And for those who are unfamiliar, autopsies is when you dissect a body to determine if there's any injuries, the cause of death, and to collect any other evidence or information that might be relevant to the investigation. So does NOPD Crime Lab, do y'all do autopsies?
We do not do autopsies. Those are with the coroner.
Do you ever receive bodies?
We do not receive bodies.
So the coroner's office does all the autopsies. Are you there during the autopsies?
We're not usually there during the autopsies, no.
All right, that's very helpful to know because, again, that goes against maybe what we might have seen on TV. Do you think, before we get into any other questions about forensic science, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today and kind of addressing some of these misconceptions, is there anywhere else that you've noticed confusion in your work that you would like to clear up before we get into the nitty-gritty?
I think the most popular thing I get is that we're just like the CSI show, and it's not at all the same. We do not process cases in an hour, for example. It takes a little bit longer than that, but I just think it's important for us, and I think we'll convey that today, how we actually work and what we actually do. And I think by the time we get to the end of this interview, people will have a better understanding of what goes into our jobs.
Amen.
We hope so.
We're happy to hear that. I mean, I'm shocked to hear that crime can't get solved in the same time that a pizza can get delivered.
You know, it's unfortunate.
I know that is really too bad, but that is good to know. So, you already defined for us what is forensic science, but can you talk to us a little bit more about where does forensic science sit in the world of the criminal legal system?
You know, I think that's a good question because oftentimes I feel like we're a silent contributor to the justice system. You know, people don't often think about forensics. You know, mainly what you see is an officer making an arrest or a prosecutor adjudicating, you know, like going through the case trial. And yeah, you might testify in a case, but usually people don't understand the impact of forensics on the outcomes of cases. And so we usually sit in a space of answering objectively those investigative questions, right? Like, could this person be on this gun, or was this gun used in a commission of another crime? You know, questions like that is where physical evidence evaluations lie, right? Like, we help answer those questions so that it's not an assumption, right? It's based on fact. You know, we'll process these pieces of evidence and we'll have these results that then will be a part of the piece of the puzzle of the investigation. So I think it's a very good question to ask today where we reside because we don't often get seen, right? We're in our labs and people don't often see us, but I think that's important to say is how impactful our results can be.
So what I'm really hearing about the impact of forensic science is really to be able to use the science to ask an investigative question an investigative question objectively.
Correct. Yes. Yes. And so that's our main job, is to answer that question, and it's all based on science. It's based on data.
So, what happens, hard question, what happens when science clashes, say, with the narrative that's being created by the investigating officer? And what I mean is, say an investigating officer, you said this, that our work in the crime lab can determine if this person was on this gun. Now, say the investigating officer is convinced that this person was on this gun. Stella, I was holding this gun. This investigating officer is 100% convinced of it. And you do your tests in the crime lab, and you disagree. You say that the science doesn't support Stella on this gun. What happens?
Well, I'm thankful that I don't know what happens, because usually, like I said, I stick to the facts, I stick to the science, and it's usually not questioned. But hypothetically, if something like that were to occur, I would always go back to the facts. Always. My job is the facts only, right? I'm giving you this piece of the puzzle for you then to go put that into your investigative process now, right? So whether or not it refutes a theory or corroborates a theory isn't really under my purview. It's not my job. My job is to produce scientific facts, and that is where we sit.
So you are housed, though, under a police department, right?
Correct.
And a police department has a chain of command, right?
Correct.
So you are answering effectively to a captain and then a deputy chief and a chief of police.
The way our chain of command is structured in the crime lab is I am reporting to a deputy chief. I report to the chief of police, right? But the best thing about forensics is because it's based on fact and because it is based in an objective framework, the structure doesn't impact our results.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
So you're able to effectively operate independently?
Yeah, I just got a new deputy chief. Hi, Chief Gernon. Yeah, so I just got a new deputy chief, and the casework is still rolling the same way it was before under Lebrano.
Okay, so the chain of command, and I just think this is an important one to highlight for anyone that's listening. The chain of command, who's in charge ultimately of the police department, cannot control the scientific findings that you're producing.
No, ma'am.
And it cannot, like, say, force you to retest something if your result disagrees with the theory of the case, as you were
No,
saying.
ma'am. That's not how we operate.
Wow. Well, that is really good to know, because that's very important to keep in mind. And just for our own frame of reference, again, when we're talking about the chain of command, police officers are not scientists, so you don't have like police officers doing these tests, right?
So I think for me, it's important to state that forensic training can be given to police officers as well. I know some phenomenal police officers who have the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. They're police officers and they're forensic professionals, right? But in our lab, we're predominantly civilian, and we're moving toward complete civilianization. That's our goal, right? But I think it's important to state that even though police officers, like I said, I think we have 6 the last time I counted, they have extensive training programs, extensive oversight, that accountability is there. And again, because the nature of forensics is objective, then who the person is does not matter as much as their training program, their competence, the quality management systems. That is what's most important about the testing that we do.
That's kind of cool. I mean, what I'm hearing is basically, if you can imagine in your mind's eye a Venn diagram, like 2 circles that intersect. Mm-hmm. And in one circle are scientists, and in the other circle are police officers. Crime Lab is kind of the meeting of both of those worlds, the overlap, right?
Yeah, we're kind of neutral, if you will, is the way I usually explain. We, again, because it's objective, we don't have a stake in the investigation, right? Like, we don't have an opinion about the outcome of the case, right? So we're never like, I got to get this guy arrested or this guy is guilty and they did it. None of that matters to us because of the objectiveness of the science. We stick to the science and let the science speak and not us.
And that's interesting to hear because, again, bring it back to television, which people have a lot of reference to. A lot of times you see in shows where, like, no, they have the crime lab technician or, people that are doing the forensic testing that are like, he's guilty and I have to test this and show this and, and it's really great to hear that the neutrality of the crime lab for NOPD.
Yes.
And neutrality it's not just important to the case and ensuring that you're actually investigating the right things and that in theory the people that have then been held accountable for that crime are the right people for the right crime. But it also increases public trust in your results and in the work that's being done in the crime lab. So a huge part of your job is kind of ensuring that level of accountability, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and I think it's important, we're just going after all the hard things right away. I think it's important that we establish something. Crime labs are important tools for solving crime through this scientific method and can be important resources, tools, assets for the prosecution of cases. But crime labs historically can also be tampered with or manipulated, and this is something that we've seen across the country. Not here, I want to be clear, but across the country there has been accusations or investigations done into crime lab techs or drug chemists who have been accused of and ultimately found guilty of falsifying results or tampering with evidence. And reading about these cases where just hundreds of individuals are affected by a rogue crime tech can make people ask, how can we trust the system? How can we know this isn't happening here? Can you talk to our listeners about how you ensure that there's accountability in your crime lab?
I think whenever I hear about these stories, the first question that comes to my mind is what type of performance measurement indicators they had in the laboratory, what type of quality management system did they have, because as we've implemented in the NOPD crime lab, you got to make sure you have oversight of the product, right? Like one of those stories, I believe, is one of the analysts was actually doing the drugs, right?
Yes.
So it's something that you have to keep an eye on, right? Like a part of your quality management system is making sure that the people who are doing the testing are abiding by the protocols. One of the things we implemented in order to do things like that is peer reviews. You got to have a second person go back over everything that first person has done to ensure that they adhere to the protocols and that they didn't make a mistake. And if they did make a mistake, they addressed it according to the protocols. So having that peer review process is very, very important. We also do internal audits. So I may have somebody from firearms go and audit my drug chemists. I also do external audits as well, where we have a third-party individual come from the outside and audit us as well. We got to have a very, very strong training program. So that's something that we implement. Before anyone touches casework, they have got to be thoroughly trained and can prove to the trainer and to us that they are competent before they start the work. I can go on and on and on, but there's several different accountability measures to make sure that the work product is sound and that your people are following the protocols, and that's what we've established at the NOPD Crime Lab.
Wow. So I just want to recap that for anybody who's like, whoa, that's a lot, because that was a lot.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's the tip of the iceberg. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
I really
same.
am. But the first thing is quality management, making sure that you know that if this many kilos of drugs have entered, this much cocaine has entered the crime lab, this is how much cocaine was utilized to be able to conduct these tests. This is how much cocaine is going to go back into evidence. It's not just, scrapped. Like, we know how much drugs are traveling through the hands of every chemist and where it is in the crime lab. And then the next thing we heard was quality review protocols, which require individuals within each department to check each other's work and to make sure that whenever mistakes happen, and mistakes are a very real part of the scientific method, let's not forget that, that they are addressed according to protocol the scientific protocol that needs to be implemented for that type of mistake. So then you also have internal audits where one division of your team is going to then audit a different division of the team to be able to make sure that everything is matching. And then you said external audits where you're bringing in outsiders to then double check not just the work that's being done, but your internal audits.
Correct.
So you're having like audit on audit. But then on the front end of all of that is you're making sure that everybody in the team is going through a strong training program.
Yes.
And then I didn't hear anything about supervision, but can you talk to us about supervision? Because I imagine supervision is another component of
Yes. So oversight is very, very important, which is some of the things that could have been lacking in those two stories that you mentioned, right? So key performance indicators are provided to me on a weekly basis regarding what each unit is pumping out every week. One of the things in one of those stories is an analyst was quadrupling the rest of the team, right? You could be, might be a rock star or something else is going on.
Right.
So if you have oversight and you notice something like that, your key performance indicator should be yellow. Like, hey, you might want to look at this. How is this possible?
Right.
So that's what we have with the weekly reports to me is what each team is pumping out on a regular basis, which allows me to give oversight over all of the units. So I get a weekly report on what we're doing, and that's very, very important.
Oh, that is a lot, and I'm happy to hear it. This is a lot of layers of people putting their eyes on the crime lab to make sure that everything is operating as it should, and that way we're not going to have one of those nightmare stories come out of our crime lab that we've seen in other places.
Right.
So, how does all of this relate to the public? Do you think the crime lab should have a relationship with the public?
I venture to say we do. Just last week, for instance, both myself and the deputy director, we participated in 2 events. One was STEAM NOLA, which was so fun. There were hundreds of kids who they saw their fingerprints for the first time, right?
Oh,
Like, it
that's
was exciting.
My friend brought us son.
Oh, it's so great. And then we also went to STEM Fest in the Superdome. We go to high schools, we go to elementary schools, and they come to us. We also participate in Forensic Science Week, where we open up our doors and allow people to come in and just learn more about what we do. Same thing with Forensic Day. We do internships because I think that's very, very important, because the internships will give them exposure to what we do, right? Students will learn whether or not this is a field for them, but also we get to see if, this might be a potential, like a hire for us. So internships are very important too. We're working on our own website.
Oh, that's
Right
so
now,
cool.
we have a page right now on the NOPD site, but we're working on our own website because we have a lot of information we want to put out there, like stats and protocols and what it is that we're doing that we don't have the ability to do right now. And
Transparency.
yeah, I love transparency. That's kind of where I was raised in the forensic world. But yeah, Reese, if you're watching, also an Instagram page for Crime Lab is something that we hope to be able to do.
Oh, we love that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned internships, so let's just go back to that really quickly. What is the age range for those people that may be interested in forensic science and want to intern with you
Great
all?
question. Right now, we're looking for juniors and seniors in college. Okay, so master's programs are also welcome. I know that there's some programs with master's degrees that have practicums, and you're required to do an internship, right? So we'll get applications in. You can email me. I'll share my email at the end. And then we go through those and look for your requirements for school and see if you're a good fit for us. And we do interviews, background checks, and everything like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. So if anyone is listening and also know any juniors or seniors in college that may be interested in forensic science, make sure y'all keep this in mind that the NOPD Crime Lab does actually accept internships. Great way to learn and a great opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And Forensic Science Week and Forensic Science Day, that sounds so cool. When is that?
Forensic Science Week is in September. I believe it's the 3rd week. And I can't remember about Forensic Day, but I'll get that to you afterward. But yeah, it's usually in September.
Oh, well, that's very cool. We'll have to have you back
to
talk about that
Absolutely.
when we get to September, and we'll have to push that because that seems like a great opportunity
very
for
fun.
people to learn about everything that's going on in the crime lab.
Yes, ma'am.
We would love to produce some future crime lab techs and scientists here New Orleans.
I never was great at science.
You were great at science?
No, I can understand it, but actually, like, let's just say I am grateful for analysts when I had a DNA case. I just call and ask all the questions, and they were great. So let's just say that.
Yes.
Scientists are a great help to all work, I will say. So now that we've done our job pushing STEM,
Go STEM.
science and math, come on, everybody. I think we have an understanding of some foundational elements of the crime lab, and that is very, very helpful. But I'm still confused about you, Dr. Kelly. Can you explain to us what you do as the director of the crime lab?
Oh, I feel like what I don't do is a shorter list.
Usually.
But in a nutshell, I'll try to summarize. What I do is I oversee the forensic operations in New Orleans. All right. So it's my job to make sure that my people have what they need. It's my job to make sure that we have the resources to do the job, but also that the building is secure and that the science is sound. Now, how I do all those things is a longer discussion. But in a nutshell, that's what I do.
That's a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
I feel it.
Can you walk us through what that might look like on an average, say, Tuesday?
Let's see. So usually it's a lot of meetings. Okay. I have, like I said, I have 56 individuals, and I got to make sure that my supervisors are able to give their people what they need on a day-to-day basis. So we have a lot of meetings and discussions about the upcoming week and what's on our plates. I also make sure that they're talking to each other, like the different units they may be sharing a case. So firearms and latent prints, right? Got to make sure they're talking to each other. I have to make sure that the units are following those protocols, right? So scheduling those internal audits and making sure we're on the accreditation track is something that I do. So usually emails, meetings, walk-arounds is the majority of what I do.
And also to clear something up, we talked about, how the crime lab is under NOPD's chain of command. Of course, you answer to your deputy chief and the chief of police. But what is the chain of command in the crime lab? Like internally?
Yeah, internally. So we have crime scene, we have firearms, we have drug chemistry, forensic biology coming soon to a lab near you if you're in New Orleans. And then we have latent prints. The crime scene unit responds to Sergeant Andrew Weedman, right? Sergeant Andrew Weedman will oversee the second watch, the second platoon, as well as overseeing the processes in CSU, and then he responds to Captain Hart. All right. Hey, Captain. And so the science side, like the laboratory science side, you got field, you got lab. The lab side, all the different units that I mentioned will report to our deputy director, who reports to me. And that's the chain of command in the lab.
Well, that is very helpful that we understand the chain of command. And I see now that we have someone who commented that that they're kind of asking about outside of the lab, how do you work with other stakeholders in the process? So they're asking, is it a collaborative effort with the coroner's office, the detectives, and the crime lab in order for it to be effective? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So usually we will all collaborate based on the case and based on whatever the need is. For example, the coroner's office, they did come over and have a tour of the laboratory because, as we build the lab, as we build the biology unit, I want to make sure that we're building it in order for it to be effective. And for me to understand that, I got to meet with external stakeholders. Like, what exactly do you need? Like, what information do you need out of this thing? Is missing persons going to be helpful for us to make sure that we incorporate, right? So lots of conversations in the meetings that I mentioned that I have day to day. It's also with external stakeholders. The DA's office, right? Like, we met with them last week and provided some forensic training. Like, hey, this is what this means in the case file, right? This is what's coming in the lab. Like, we're building the forensic biology lab. This is what you can expect, type of thing. So just as with the public, we're very, very open with our stakeholder partners as well in collaborating with making sure that we're providing the services that are actually helpful.
That's great to hear because it does take multiple partners to be able to do this work. So
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
glad to hear that you're working with all of those partners.
Yep.
We can't do this in a silo.
No, ma'am.
So you brought up a couple times the forensic biology lab.
Yeah.
What is that?
Forensic biology. So you may hear us interchangeably say DNA, DNA lab. You know, that's what a lot of people hear, the DNA lab. When's the DNA lab coming? But we refer to it as the forensic biology lab because they don't just do DNA analysis. The forensic biology unit also will screen or perform serology.
What's serology?
Serology is the study of biological fluids, right? So they'll get that evidence in and determine whether or not blood or another biological substance could be present. That's the first step of the process, is serology first. So forensic biology gets it, they first do serology on it. If they get anything from their results that are positive, they're going to forward that to DNA. And so forensic biology houses 3 units, really. You got serology, you got DNA, and you're going to have CODIS.
What's
And what's
CODIS?
CODIS?
Hey, look
You
at
already
that, Jinx.
know. You already know that was coming.
Right. Now, when you have watched CSI, you may have seen they say, we got a hit in the database. Usually they're talking about CODIS. It stands for the Combined DNA Index System, and it houses DNA profiles from evidence, arrestees, forensic mixtures, and things like that within the database. And this database is used to compare whether or not profiles are already in it. If profiles are already in it, then it might have been entered by another laboratory or the same laboratory, a laboratory in Georgia, a laboratory in, DC. So the database is used in order to determine whether or not there is an investigative lead, like somebody is a hit in the system because they've maybe done a previous crime.
And so it's nationally.
Yes, it's national, it's local, and statewide. So state to state, local, like St. Tammany, local, and then nationally. So it has 3 levels in one database.
Wow. All right. Well, that is helpful to know. So those are the 3 areas that would be in the forensic biology lab. Can you say it one more time? It was
Serology,
serology,
DNA,
DNA,
and CODIS.
CODIS. Okay. Those are the 3 pillars of the forensic biology lab. And we don't currently have this lab, correct?
We do not. We're working on it.
So whenever this work needs to be done right now, today, what do we do?
Right now, all the DNA requests are sent to the Louisiana State Police Crime Lab.
By you?
No, ma'am. So all the requests are housed outside of the NOPD Crime Lab. We don't oversee any of the requests. We don't receive any of the requests. Those are given by someone outside of the lab who then will take them to LSP and make a request there.
Wow. Okay.
That's
So
interesting.
yeah, I feel this is another area where it's really helpful to peel back the layers, because this feels like some misinformation, or not misinformation, but just confusion in the processes. Because I feel I've read a lot of articles on backlogs, say, that are happening in our testing of DNA evidence. And frequently I felt like I was hearing the language about crime lab and backlogs and DNA testing.
And just not ours. It's not ours, yeah.
It's not NOPD's
Correct.
crime lab
Yes.
where the backlog might be occurring.
Correct. Because we don't house any of the samples, we don't get the requests, so we can't really have a backlog if we're not doing the testing.
Interesting. And because you're not the one sending the request and you're not the one setting priorities for those requests.
No, ma'am.
So you don't decide at all
No, we do not.
what DNA gets tested and what doesn't.
No, ma'am. Not yet.
Or
Not
when
yet.
it gets tested.
Right. Or when. Yes.
Or when.
That's correct.
Okay, well, that is very helpful to know. So there's a lot of advocates, a lot of partners, a lot of different people that are doing work around this issue. And so it's good to know that at this time, Crime Lab is not a component of that discussion.
The NOPD Crime Lab, correct.
The NOPD.
One day,
Crime Lab.
though, one day we can talk about it. Hopefully not backlogs, but one day we can talk about requests for DNA for sure.
And
Just
so-
not today.
We keep talking about one day, right? So I know NOPD is in the process of trying to get, the forensic biology lab open. So when do you expect for us to have that operational?
I expect by the end of 2027, we will get that gold star from our accrediting body that says, all right, you can take casework now. That's what I'm hoping.
Okay.
And we are on track. So that's good.
We're on track. So the current status of NOPD's forensic biology lab would be, if you had to give it a score, it is on track.
Yeah, we are on track. We do not have any obstacles right now. We're still rolling. And I'll check back with you next year and see and tell you that we're still on track or we're not on track. But yeah, we've been able to procure what we need. We've been able to hire. These are all the things that affect that timeline.
And Dr. Kelly, while we're talking about accreditation for the crime lab, can you just briefly explain to our listeners what exactly accreditation is?
Well, accreditation is a demonstration of compliance with very rigorous standards, over 200 standards we have to be in compliance with in order for us to be accredited. And then when you tack on DNA, that's about 300 more standards because they have another accrediting body to be in compliance with. So accreditation is just that demonstration that you are in compliance with standards that are best practices.
Wow, so we're talking about potentially 500 standards.
Yeah,
that are making sure
or
they're
more.
fulfilled.
Yeah.
Or more.
So the timeline that we're talking about, like 2027, when you're saying this is not out of the ordinary for it to be this long.
Oh, no, ma'am, not at all. In
Or
fact,
or this fast.
Yes.
Depending on
I was
your
going to say, I think it's generous.
Yes.
You know? It's a lofty goal for sure, but I think it's beyond possible. We're going to do it.
So you mentioned that there's, say, 200 standards for one area and then 300 more standards when you move into DNA and forensic biology, I mean. So what I'm hearing is, can different aspects of the crime lab receive different accreditations? Like, is there one accreditation that applies to, say, ballistics and, say, like a different accreditation that applies to latent fingerprints?
You know, that's another misconception, so I'm glad we're touching on that.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
whenever you hear a laboratory say that they are accredited, is the whole lab accredited? The way accreditation work is accreditation is granted per discipline.
Oh.
So in order for a lab to be fully accredited, each discipline has to be accredited. And then you can say, oh, we are fully accredited, right? Right now we are partially accredited. And so we're trying to move toward that fully accredited laboratory. And we're going to get there.
Where are you partially accredited?
We are partially accredited in latent print processing. So we have that accreditation under our scope. We're accredited in firearms analysis. And we're now accredited in crime scene investigations.
Wow, that's great. That's great. But I say that's great, but I don't even know if that's great. Why does accreditation matter?
Accreditation, again, remember I just said hundreds of standards, right? And those standards are best practices. So just by being accredited alone, it enhances your processes in-house, which is why having that gold star of accreditation impacts my voir dire. Every time I go testify, the question is, are you accredited?
Yes.
Why is that question asked?
They wanna know if
Because
they
of
can
what it
trust
carries,
Right.
right? So credibility is really important. And the third thing people may not know accreditation is so important for is money.
Why?
You have to be accredited to get certain grants. To qualify, you got to be accredited.
Okay, so what we're hearing is it's important for grants and it's important for Valdir. I
Voir
always
dire.
struggle.
So whenever whenever I go testify, that's the main question that's asked every time is,
Yeah.
are you accredited? Are you accredited?
So that means whenever you're testifying in front of a jury
Yes.
or in a trial or some type of criminal proceeding, you get asked.
Yes. Accreditation builds credibility.
Accreditation builds credibility. That is nicely put. So who decides? Accreditation according to who?
Third-party independent organizations will decide whether or not you are worthy of accreditation.
Is this something you can buy?
No, you cannot purchase accreditation. You have to be in compliance to gain accreditation.
Is this something that's decided by like scientists or
I think some of them could be
police
scientists who
officers?
are, some scientists are in that third party who don't work at NOPD, right? Like they may be from Philadelphia or some other crime lab who has extensive expertise. They have to be extensively trained and have years and years of casework under their belt in order for them to audit another laboratory.
And you talked about the different standards, like 200 and 300 plus standards that you have to meet. Who actually sets those?
That's decided by the International Organization of Standardization. That's a mouthful.
Wait, can you say
I-
it again? Say it again
ISO. So it's ISO,
Okay.
ISO, but it's actually the International Organization of Standardization. So it's flipped, but it is ISO.
The International.
Organization of Standardization. Good job, girls.
They said ISO.
Yeah, that is a
All right.
tongue twister that I don't want to have to say more than once.
I got to stay on the stand, so I understand.
And how long is an accreditation good for?
It's good usually for 5 years. So every 5 years you have to get reaccredited. Every 5 years, but every year you have to demonstrate that you're maintaining compliance.
Okay.
Every single year.
So what happens if a lab loses its accreditation?
That's a very good question. Thankfully, I don't have experience with this either.
Nice
But
backdoor brag.
I think that the concern could be the credibility of the work from courts. They could look at your work as, okay, is your work still good? Like, should we just snatch casework from you until you get it back? You know, I don't really know what the outcome would be, but I know that laboratories across the nation are accredited, like 99%, literally. There's 400 publicly funded laboratories in the nation, and 99% of them are accredited. Because in our world, accreditation is the floor, not the ceiling. It's not this humongous thing that you strive for. It's a minimum. So at a minimum in our world, you will be accredited, but then you got to jump higher than that.
Right.
Okay. So yes, it's a lot of standards. Yes, it's not easy to get or maintain, but you need to be going above and beyond, especially in my lab.
All right.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And I think the public would
Yes.
appreciate that too. So that's good to hear. So it's the floor. So we were talking about this as if this was like
A
your
gold star,
Everest.
like yay.
Yeah.
Well,
we've
yeah,
done
I think,
something.
and I did some research on law enforcement accreditation too, and I saw where 1% of law enforcement is accredited, right? And because I think the perspective is a little bit different.
Right.
Like, yes, maybe it is, unnecessary. It's not required, right? And you are jumping for this ceiling, but not like in the forensic world. It's different. It's flipped. Like at a minimum, you will be accredited. Yeah.
I guess you kind of got to look at it in a way of when you choose your colleges,
Or your
You wanna-
doctor. Don't you want a licensed doctor?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, definitely want a licensed doctor.
So while we're talking about the type of lab that you expect to run, the type of lab, the high standards that you have, I know in the past you've talked to us about this idea of a data-driven lab. What is that?
So for me, I'm a girl who likes spreadsheets and numbers and data, and I want to make sure that when I'm procuring things, that I need it, right? I want to make sure I know how much of it I need, so I've created data to tell me where my allocations and resources need to be. So I use data for that. I use data for performance. So I want to make sure that the work that we're doing is of the utmost. So some of the things I look at in performance aren't just turnaround times, but I also look at quality trends, like what mistakes are we making? What are the trends that I'm seeing? Why is it happening? Is it happening because we need to enhance our protocols? Is it happening because it's person specific? Or is it happening because of our processes that need to change? Do we need new equipment? I have to use data for that, not how I feel. Like, I feel like today I might need to change my protocols. No. I want the data to speak to me about that. And then later on down the line, especially when DNA is up and rolling, I want to use the data to help investigators identify what is probative. Like, because identifying what's probative can be hard sometimes, but I can tell you that, like, fired cartridge casings, for example, you're not going to get a lot of DNA on those. The heat has already burned off a lot of it. But there might be a protocol in this particular case that could help retain and get some of the DNA off of the casings a little bit better. So just kind of keeping up with research, using data to make those decisions is really, really helpful.
And that helps, in general, the lab stay subjective
Yes.
and not run objectively. And creating data as
Or objective, yeah.
Stella would also always say, this outlasts you.
Correct.
This is something that people can look back at and see those trends and see what worked, what was historically working well, what wasn't working well, and what may need to be changed in the future.
Right. Yes.
And one thing that Bonzilla always used to say, I heard a former employee of the Office of the Independent Police Monitor is feelings aren't facts.
I love
And
that.
so we love
That on a
hearing-
shirt.
Yeah, honestly, we were like, we need to put that on a throw pillow. We ended up putting it on her plaque when she left the
Aw,
office.
sweet.
Feelings aren't facts.
Yeah.
But facts are very, very, very important. So you kind of give us an idea of how you're going to use data and like your analysis of that data to be able to shape your work from performative trends to quality trends. But how can it be used, say, for deciding priority around testing that you're doing, like DNA testing or anything else in the future when you have that ability?
I think for me, like I mentioned a little bit before, I think it would better be used to determine which process to take, not necessarily like I think, should we do this protocol on it or that protocol on it to get the best information? I think that's how I would use it rather than prioritizing the case. Because for me, and this is probably one of my flaws, like everything is a priority to me. Like all of it needs to get done. But I want to make sure that when we do it, it's the best protocol for us to do it and get the right answer.
I love that.
That's amazing.
And I have to say, Dr. Kelly, and I really feel you deserve your flowers. We've been hitting you with hard questions, but that's because we think very highly of you. I'm
thank you.
going to be very clear that we
Thank
do.
you.
And you were hired as the crime lab director in January of 2023, and we have seen incredible growth. We have seen it's really impressive, the things we've seen under your leadership. So can you, since you've started, how have you seen the crime lab grow?
I think for me, staffing is a big one, right? I believe when I started, there were 30 individuals, and now, like I said, 57 of us. And among those is key hires, such as the deputy director. This is not, a solo job here. Like, definitely need a good team in the management area. Hiring a quality manager is very important because, quality is the heartbeat of the laboratory. If that fails, then you don't have a lab. You don't have good work. So hiring the quality manager, Heather, you're amazing, has been fantastic as well. I think in addition to that, getting new equipment was really important.
Yes, we heard that a lot.
Some of the individual equipment was being used during Katrina or shortly thereafter. It was very, very old equipment, and that's not good in the forensic world, right? Like, we want to make sure, just like with a new car that runs better than an old car, it's not breaking down. Same thing with the instruments. We want to make sure that the instruments that we're using can provide an efficient and correct result. So we got to keep up with the newer equipment, the newer versions, the new chemistries. So enhancing the methods has been something that we're working toward. Digitization. My staff will tell you this. I don't like paper. I do not like paper. And so we have moved toward digital everything. Like, I don't want any paper floating around my lab, right? I want to be able to see it. I want to be able to, sign off more efficiently. So we're paper light right now is the way I call it. But like my Friction Ridge or latent print unit, they are fully digital. There are no paper case files. They're all digital. And that's what I want all of us to move toward. The forensic biology is currently building the same thing. So digitization has been very, very important to us as well. Enhancing those methods, buying new equipment, and staffing us to full capacity is what the growth that I've seen since I've come.
That is fantastic growth.
Thank
That
you,
is
yeah.
fantastic growth, and I think that's very reassuring, especially when we do reflect back. I mean, you brought up Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah,
How many things were lost? Files gone.
yeah.
We love hearing that you're taking on the new technological changes that need to be made to ensure the quality of your work, but also the preservation.
Yes, that's
of your work.
important.
And the shareability of your work when needed. It makes it easier for you to be able to share that work as you need to.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that is fantastic. And I have to say, I'm inspired listening to you.
Aw, thank
but
you.
What if there is a young person listening or a quasi-young person who's saying, I love this work. Do you have any advice to the next generation of Dr. Kellys?
I think for me, forensic science or being a crime lab director is not a job. Like, for me, it's a calling. Whenever people ask me, why I do this, or what I love about it is an assignment for me, so I responded to the call and I'm here, and that's what keeps my passion burning. I just remember the purpose and the impact that it has. So if that's something that a young person listening wants to do, then you go for it, and don't let anything stop you from getting it.
That's wonderful. And while we're on that topic of young people, I want to revisit the internship so people can know how to contact you. It's in your email, in case they are inspired by listening to you talk about forensic science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm going to provide my email. So email me, and I'll get you where you need to be and get you the information you need. My email is Shamika, SHAMIKA .Kelley, KELLEY @NOLA.gov. And like I said, we're trying to build a website. So, that's where the future information is going to be, right? It's on our website.
And Reese, or Officer Thornburg, also on your Instagram page, right?
Yes, correct, yes.
Just, I love all of those things because they will demystify a very important component of police work and of scientific work that's happening here in New Orleans that does affect every aspect of the criminal legal system and how we're policed.
Yes, ma'am.
That is great. Is there any other misconceptions or confusion out there that you think we need to address today to make sure that people understand?
I think for me personally, it's important to point out that it is not normal to build a DNA lab. It's not normal.
Talk to us about that.
What I mean by that is usually when a director takes a position in a crime lab, it's a well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there's 400 labs, and I can count on one hand right now how many labs are actually building a DNA lab, and none of them are, in New Orleans or have our type of structure in government, right? So it's difficult to do something like that, and it entails a lot of intricate steps and a lot of money, and it's not easy to do. So the reason I wanted to bring that up is because people expect the lab to be open yesterday.
Right.
Yes. But there's a lot of different steps, and it's not an easy thing to do, and we need a lot of support from the city, right? Mm-hmm. We need a lot of support from individuals to make sure that we stay on task. So I just want to say New Orleans has a unique and historic thing happening, and it's going to be fantastic. I cannot wait. I think I might cry whenever we get there. But I just want that misconception to be conveyed as well, is that this is not normal. And in fact, I don't have any resources, right? Like I can't say, hey, when you built this lab, when you did, because it's not normal. I have one other person who's done it in Tennessee, and that was ages ago, but usually it's already built. So having to build this and run the rest of the lab is not an easy feat.
Oh my gosh, you need like 3 more Dr.
Uh-huh.
Kelley.
Yeah. I can only imagine how much time, dedication this is taking.
Yeah. But I'm grateful. I'm blessed to be able to do it. And I have an amazing team. I know they're listening. Let me tell you, the forensic yes, indeed, the forensic biology team,
they definitely do.
And the quality team, they are killing it. Mm-hmm. They are they're working around the clock to bring this to you, and I cannot wait.
We can't either.
and for the public, for anybody who's listening, and we really hope people are, and that they are taking all of this in, because I am. This is so helpful for us. What can they do to support you in this?
I think people listening right now, what you can do that's tangible is encourage us, because it's not it is a thankless job, if you will. People don't often see us and see how hard we're working, so we kind of get forgotten about. So I think just encouragement that goes a long way for us.
Encouragement, maybe an encouragement that involves also a copying of their
bring
city
snacks.
Council member.
No.
Reminding them
Bring
that,
snacks.
Yeah, bring snacks. So whether it's an Oreo or some snack cakes, or a letter to your city council member saying that you want to make sure that this stays a financial priority for the city.
for sure.
Or
Definitely.
a thank you note to your crime lab tech.
Yeah. Yes, that's perfect. My CSIs. You see them out there on the news. Like they're
We see 'em
always
out there all
out
the
there.
time.
And
Yeah.
again,
See them
they
out
are,
there at Teens.
they are doing a great job. A fantastic job.
Well, we want to say thank you, Dr.
Yeah,
Kelly.
thank,
thank
you.
you
We
for
don't
the
have
opportunity.
any snacks to offer you. But
We have water. That's
Yeah,
part
the
of
water's
it, but,
great.
You know,
we
thank you.
sincerely say thank you.
No, thank y'all so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that wraps up today's episode of the Monitor's Mic, and I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in and staying engaged with the crucial conversations we're having about police oversight and community safety. Again, a special thank you to Dr. Kelly for her impressive work in building our crime lab, ensuring accountability and evidence processing that we have, and for breaking down the work and impact of the crime lab. Also, as a reminder, make your plan for voting on March 29th. Early voting ends on tomorrow. We also have a public forum on March 25th at the Tremay Center in the Arts and Craft Room on the second floor from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Kids are welcome and food will be served. If you missed any part of today's show or want to catch up on any past episodes, visit our website at www.nolaipm.gov, and you can find and follow us on YouTube at NOLA IPM. You can also follow us on social media for updates and news, and on Instagram, we're NOLA OIPM, and on Facebook, the New Orleans Independent Police Monitor. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, and stay committed to building a safer community. And this has been the Monitor's Mic.